Mental Health First Aid. My name is Denise Ellsbury, and this month I am going to be visiting with two different people, but we're going to do it in two different segments. So during my first segment, I'm going to be talking with Karen Doyle, and Karen is the Director of Advancement and Outreach for Samara Care, which is a counseling agency primarily located in Naperville. But I really wanted to visit with Karen and then one of the counselors from Samara Care to talk about sort of their unique way of offering counseling with a faith-based component to it. So Karen, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Samara Care, tell me a little bit about Samara Care and its mission and vision. What makes Samara Care unique?
Well, I think there's three things about us that make us very special. First one is we see clients from ages 2 to 92, so we see the entire age spectrum. So we can see a child and then their parents, or we can see the whole family. And we're also seeing a lot of elderly clients, so we're seeing the caregivers and the child, or the parent, so we can see the entire age range. That's the first thing. The second thing is the faith component. All our therapists are specially trained in the integration of faith and psychotherapy. So if the client wants to integrate that into their treatment, they can. It's completely client driven, but everybody on staff is specially trained in the integration of faith and psychotherapy. And then the third thing is we are a nonprofit, and we believe that everyone deserves to have treatment, so we offer a fee subsidy. And so, regardless of if you can't pay for your deductible or if you don't have insurance at all, we provide access to care for everyone.
Awesome.
So which kind of leads to our mission, which is that we are compassionate and spirit-led counselors, consultants, and educators, and we have the vision that everyone gets the care that they need.
All right, so let's talk about that first piece, kind of that age range kind of thing, which, like you don't often think about young kids, maybe 2-year-olds needing counseling, but sometimes parents really need that service with their child. So what kind of is involved in that kind of counseling?
That's the piece of that is more early intervention.
Okay.
For like autism and people on the kids on the spectrum, I think the quicker you get in, the more likely that you're going to have success. So they really work with testing and early intervention in that age range.
Okay. And then that other piece that you mentioned, like the elderly and that component of being able to do that with caregivers, I can see why that would be so helpful.
Just being a caregiver is really stressful. And in fact, we're getting ready to go through an expansion. We own our entire building right now, but there's a third of it we rent out to somebody, and they're getting ready to retire. So when they retire, we're turning that space into a child and adolescent wing. So that'll give us more space for children, and then it'll open up space on the other side of the building for the growing senior services. So.
All right. How many therapists do you have at Samara Care?
We actually have a new one starting next week, so I think we're around 20.
Wow,
yeah,
that's a lot.
Well, the Naperville office is our largest, so we have that one at 75th and Book, but then we have an additional office in Downers Grove and then another one in Geneva. So.
Oh, I didn't realize you had one in Geneva.
We do.
All right. So how about that piece that you mentioned in terms of that all the therapists have that additional training in terms of the interplay or the integration of counseling and faith?
Faith and psychotherapy?
Yes.
We are part of a larger group called the Samaritan Institute, and they're an accreditation body, and that's actually one of their requirements, that there is a regular ongoing, I think it's a monthly training of all the therapists of the integration of faith and psychotherapy. So again, it's completely up to the client, and we have a wide variety of faith perspectives on our staff. I mean, we have more conservatives, more liberal people. We actually have a Jewish psychologist, somebody that would consider himself a practicing Buddhist. So we have a wide range, and it's truly just really up to the client and how they want to bring that into their care.
And do you find that many of the clients that are coming want that component, and that's why they're coming to Samara Care?
Yeah. I mean, we have a really close relationship with many congregations in the church, in the area, so a large amount of our referrals come from that. And then probably the largest amount of referrals come from previous clients, so they know that that's a piece of who we are. And then the congregations. I mean, we were started 46 years ago, 3 congregations in Naperville. There was a Presbyterian, a Catholic, and a Lutheran church that all came together. Okay. So we've had that as the core of who we are from the very beginning. So I think that we're known for that, and then people often, when you need help, that's a part of what you're, how you go about healing.
Sure, and sometimes that is where someone goes initially, right?
Yep.
Like I'm going to go talk to
absolutely.
someone in my faith community and say, this is going on for me.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that really helps ministers or faith leaders to be able to say like, oh, hey, I got this place you can go.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So SamariCare, what's involved in that name, or what is that, the significance of that?
Some people might know us as Samaritan Interfaith. Like I said, we've been 45 years, and last year, February, we announced our new name. Couple different pieces to it. Samaritan, I can't tell you how many times I was telling people, no, I do not work for Good Samaritan Hospital. It just was becoming part of the lexicon. When we went in, we were really looking at kind of just refreshing. We didn't necessarily go in with the predetermined decision to change our name. But as we looked at it, we're like, that it's confusing. There's a lot of other options. So the SamariCare, the Samara is a nod to Samaritan. But it has an entirely different meaning. So it's those whirlybird things, they're all over now as the trees fall down. So those things, those are Samaras. So I know, isn't that funny? And that's how traditional of a symbol of a counseling center is, that is the growth and the new birth from a seed. So it fits perfectly. And then the other meaning is guarded by God. So it fit perfectly into our faith perspective in the counseling center. And then the care is just care. It's who we are. When we did a lot of interviewing, and that just came up over and over and over again. So it just seemed like a very good natural progression for us. Okay.
And I like kind of your tagline that's on there, which is choose stronger.
Yep. That's my favorite thing of the whole piece. When we went in, I was very vocal about it. I hated our logo. I hated the color. I was so ready for the change. So I thought I would be the most excited about the way it ended up looking. But I think what excited me the most in the end was the way we changed how we were talking. So we didn't change our core values. We didn't change who we are or what we believe in. But we really have a newfound emphasis on advocacy and encouraging people to speak up and saying that, mental health and physical health, you can't have physical health without your mental health. And if you had a broken arm, you go to the doctor. If you have a mental health issue, you get help. And we're really, everything we talk about, everything we put out is encouraging people to ask people how they're doing, and then encouraging people to give honest responses. So if you're not okay, don't say, oh, I'm fine. I need help. So people asking for help and making mental health and mental illness a regular part of a comfortable conversation.
It's so much of what mental health first aid is about as well, which is that whole idea of destigmatizing mental health and, like you say, encouraging people to notice and have those conversations and making it okay to have those conversations. So that's really exciting to hear about that change. So when we come back, we're going to visit with Jenilyn Neary Metcalf, who's one of the counselors at SamariCare, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about her work specifically, and then we'll meet Karen again at the end of the show. So join us after the break.
Their support changed my life.
They were like family.
My voice is now heard.
A home for every animal.
My future is bright because they cared.
This is our home now.
Thank you to the 1,200 nonprofits that serve Cass and Clay counties every day.
Welcome back to Mental Health First Aid. We've been talking with some people from Samara Care Counseling, and this segment I'm going to be talking with Jenalyn Neary Metcalf. Jenalyn is one of the therapists at Samara Care. She is also one of my co-instructors for Mental Health First Aid, and I really enjoy teaching with her, so thank you for being here, Jenalyn.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Denise.
So, Karen and I had been talking a little bit about just some of the things that make Samara Care unique, and she mentioned that all of the therapists at Samara Care have kind of some training about the interplay between sort of spirituality, faith, and psychotherapy. So I'd like to hear about that from you, from the therapist perspective. What can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. I have my master's in spiritual formation, so I'm also a spiritual director, along with my clinical psychology degree. And part of my training in clinical psychology was at the Danielson Institute, where we are trained to integrate religion, spirituality, and psychology.
Which have sometimes been sort of like seen as being sort of oppositional to each other.
Yeah, but if you look at the history of psychology, it's about the spirit. Like if you understand the history better, that it really does take the whole person into account. So my approach to therapy is very holistic. I consider their physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And I always tell them I want to know all of that, because when one is affected, all the other parts are affected as well. When we're not doing well emotionally, it really does affect us physically and spiritually as well.
And so do people kind of talk about their faith during counseling sessions with you?
Yeah, and we welcome that. If that's something really important to them, then we definitely talk about that and integrate that into their therapy work. We also know from research that having a faith background is really a supportive coping skill or coping mechanism as they go through emotional turmoil or trouble in their lives.
So do you find that when people come in, are they often talking about their faith being impacted in a negative way because of maybe some of the emotional distress that they're experiencing?
Yeah, eventually, if that's an important part of their life, then they usually bring up, why would God do this? Why would He allow this? So they begin to question some of maybe God's purpose for all this. Some people are able to maneuver that and say, okay, maybe God has a purpose for this. Maybe He's trying to teach me something. And other people, it becomes really a faith crisis of why would God allow such suffering? Right?
And so how do you address that then in counseling?
Any answer you give when somebody's suffering is not adequate, right? Because they are suffering. So my approach begins with just asking, where do you find God in all of this? How do you experience Him? Does He feel near? Does He feel far? Does He feel do you feel like He's guiding you through this? Is He comforting, or does He feel punishing? Because all that, if you take that into account, it could actually be very telling of how they view the world, right? How they view themselves and the sense of their being in this world.
Which I can imagine for some people to be asked those questions in that non-judgmental environment is maybe something that they haven't considered before. Not that their faith organizations are judgmental, but that's sometimes the perspective that we bring to our faith organizations. So to have that opportunity to maybe consider those questions in a really safe place, I imagine it can be a very healing thing.
Yeah, and it really could be, because it's scary sometimes to think, is God angry with me? Has God abandoned me? Do I need to do more to please Him? And that really isn't what it's about, right? It's about their sense of how they view their problem and how they're handling the stress in their life. So sometimes gathering their community of faith helps them to feel like, okay, I have some people here who can support me through this, and they're not judging me, like you said, right? They're not ignoring the painful parts of this, like, oh, you just got to pray more, or you just got to read the Bible more, or the Quran more, right? But they're saying, we're here to help you. We want to walk with you through this pain. Yeah.
Do you work with people from a variety of faith traditions?
Yes, and we really, even people who are maybe not in the traditional religious kind of church setting or synagogue or anything like that. It could just be somebody who's spiritual. Like, we welcome that because that's the sense of who they are. That's an important part of their being, whether it's a traditional, God image or just their sense of spirituality. We work with all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So finding ways to incorporate that for that person and what's meaningful to them.
Yes, that's a great way to put it, Denise. It's really meaning making, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of their existential place in this world and how they are in this world. So it could look different for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Jenilyn, do you, as a therapist, have some specialties, either in terms of ages that you work with, or specific concerns that people might have?
Yeah, I actually work with mostly adolescents to adults.
Okay.
And I do work with a variety of issues and concerns, from trauma, grief, marital issues, spiritual issues, ADHD. So I do work with a variety of things that people experience in life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So if it, kind of anybody that was seeking counseling, you would feel comfortable working with them,
Yes,
kind of a thing.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little more then about your what it means to be a spiritual director.
Yeah. I think it gives me a different perspective on how they experience God. It gives me a listening ear for that part of their life versus just focusing on the emotional part. Because some people really come in and struggle with, is God mad at me? Like, why is he allowing these things? I just yesterday I had that conversation with one of my clients. And it was a conversation that allowed me to look a little bit deeper into how she I think, experiences people and God. When we digged a little deeper, we were able to see that she doesn't feel safe in this world, right? And who does she trust, right? So spiritual directing allows me to just ask the questions that feel meaningful to them in their spiritual and religious life.
Yeah, I can see why having that right up front in terms of like being able to talk about faith, right, and having that right up front does open up some other doors for people to know that, oh, okay, I can go there in this conversation, and somebody at least is going to have that understanding about why this is important to me.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know you're also a mental health first aid instructor.
Yes.
Yeah. And what is it how do you kind of build that into your practice?
Yeah. I got the training with you for mental health first aid because I see that people come in much later than they should, right? Like the symptoms have been present for so long. And I kept thinking, how do we get more eyes and ears, compassionate eyes and ears out there so that people get treated earlier? And we know from research that when they come earlier for treatment, the outcomes are better. Right? So when I heard about mental health first aid, I thought, there it is.
That's what I need to do.
Yeah, that's what I need to do to be part of destigmatizing mental health issues and destigmatizing people from coming for therapy sooner.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So it has been a joy to do, because I feel like I say this when we teach. I always say, you guys are like my Marines, right? You're the first ones out there to see what's going on. Right, your eyes and ears out there before they even come to us sometimes, and you might be the compassionate person who says, you know what, maybe you should see somebody.
Yeah. So thank you so much for chatting with us, Jenilyn. I really appreciate you helping us kind of understand that therapist perspective. When we come back, we'll visit with Karen again.
Their support changed my life.
They were like family.
My voice is now heard.
A home for every animal.
My future is bright because they cared.
This is our home now.
Thank you to the 1,200 nonprofits that serve Cass and Clay counties every day.
Welcome back to Mental Health First Aid. We've been visiting with Karen Doyle and Jenilyn Neary-Metcalf from SamaraCare, and we're visiting with Karen again. So, you'd mentioned earlier about kind of how SamaraCare got started in terms of 3 different churches coming together. How do you continue to kind of work with or interact with faith organizations?
Well, collaboration has always been a core and a big piece of who we are. So one of the things we just did recently was a kind of an offshoot of the Interfaith Mental Health Coalition. We convened together a group of Catholic parishes with the hope that they would share what was working in their mental health ministry development and what their challenges were. And so it's been really cool. We kind of brought them together and got them talking. And through that Send Silence Packing event, the suicide awareness and prevention event we did last May, was an outcome of that. And some of them are much further along in their ministry development than others, and it's been really cool to watch them kind of wrap their arms around the other ones and pull them forward. So one of the parishes has a website developed specifically for mental health ministry, which they've shared with everybody. So things like that, it's been really nice to kind of get people to come together and really share what their strengths are and what their triumphs have been, and really support each other in their ministry development.
And so you're kind of the conveners of that, and
exactly.
do you act as coaches, or do you just kind of bring people together and let the magic happen?
A little of both. I think that the initial thought might be to have been coaching, but really they're doing it together. I mean, they're doing it together, and some of them they're parish nurses that have a rich, long history to share with each other. So it's definitely a collaboration.
And do you see that branching out to some of the other denominations or faith organizations?
Very much hopeful. That's definitely what we see happening and what we're planning on happening. So
nice.
It's a work in progress.
All right. To join that group, or maybe other groups that would?
I think a little bit of both. I think we don't want it to get too big, because I think as the groups get too big, you lose some of the ability for them to share. So I think the intent is to stay small enough that the groups can actually get comfortable with each other and know each other well, so they can share ideas and kind of bounce them off at each other. So we'll probably be more likely that we would develop additional groups instead of coming together in one huge group.
So what types of mental health ministries do faith organizations have?
They're all over the gamut. I mean, there's some that, like I said, are very well developed, and some churches actually have therapists on staff, and then there's Stephen ministry programs. There's somebody's just getting ready to host Mental Health First Aid. So it really just kind of depends on where they are. And there's some simple things, just putting them in the prayers, praying for those with mental health issues. Support groups, different things like that. So there's really a variety of things that they can do.
So can you tell us what Stephen Ministers are? Because you mentioned that.
It's actually a companionship program that some churches have put into place. People will be assigned with somebody that's struggling, and you kind of do a regular check-in and just make sure they're doing okay.
Okay, so not a professional person, but someone who.
I'm actually a Stephen minister at our church, so no.
Okay, so again, it's just like that sort of consistent emotional support from a peer or someone that is part of your organization.
Yes, very much so.
Nice, nice. So any other collaborations or partnerships that Samarica has?
We actually have two that are really unique that we are so proud of. The first one is we provide free on-site clinical services at Loaves and Fishes. So those are people that don't have access to care, and we're there. So not only do we provide counseling services, we do a lot of what they call milieu therapy, and it's just talking about it. Again, it relates all back to the advocacy and the anti-stigma and getting people to talk. And then we offer there's an on-site or an online mental health screening that they can take at Loaves and Fishes too. So it's just a way to get people to feel comfortable about opening up and talking about their mental health.
And Loaves and Fishes is it a food pantry?
Yes.
Okay, so when people are there just getting food, they can also have an opportunity to interact with a counselor in a very kind of gentle environment kind of thing.
Yes,
all right,
very much
awesome.
so. And then the other thing is we're about a year into being the primary behavioral health care providers for bridge communities. So,
and those are?
They provide transitional living for homeless families, primarily women, single women and children. And it's a comprehensive 2-year program that we are providing their mental health services for. So
nice.
Yeah,
so
it's a great program, and we've been really proud to be a part of it. So.
Okay, and are there several different locations for that?
They have. I know there are offices in Glen Ellen. I think they have some homes in Glen Ellen. They have quite a few in Naperville, actually. So I think their largest areas are in Naperville. So those, where at Loaves and Fishes, we provide the services on site. At Loaves and Fishes, the bridge community clients come to our office.
Okay. All right. So another way to kind of reach out into the community and, like you say, meet that other part of your mission, which is that everybody has access.
Deserves care. That is we were founded on the Christian values that everybody deserves care.
All right, excellent. So anything else that would be helpful for us to know about Samarica as you guys move forward? Or
well, are you familiar with our Silent Samaritans breakfast?
I am not.
You are. Well, we have this year will be our 11th, so it's our annual breakfast. It's women helping women. So we have a speaker come in. It's typically somebody that has had a mental health struggle that writes a book, and she comes in and does a motivational, inspirational speech. Then we have a client that will come in and share her story about how they benefited from the mental health services. And it's just a nice, lovely morning. So it's February 22nd at Hotel Arista, so that is coming up.
All right, and what is that one called again?
That is called the Silent Samaritans Breakfast.
All right, and people could find that by
You can go to our website, which is samaricacounseling.org.
All right, excellent.
Although it's not up yet, but it
will be there.
Yes.
It's awesome to hear about just like the range of services and the outreach that you guys have in the community, and you guys. There's no sort of geographical stipulation to where
not at all.
So if people are willing to travel, they can get services there, and you guys take a range of insurances for counseling, as well as you mentioned, sort of like the
fee subsidized services. So if we can't take your insurance or don't use your insurance, or if you can't afford your deductible or copay, we make it work. So.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk with you and Jenilyn. So thank you for being with us here on Mental Health First Aid, and until next month, be well.